This is the Spiders and Knit podcast in association with the BFG podcast. Today we are here with Holly, Jonathan, and Helena to talk about the latest football Ferns squad for their upcoming tour. Who would like to begin?
I would like to start about the kit release. What did everybody think? I think the black ones are really nice. I'm not sold on the white and teal. What did you guys think about that, the kit release?
Love the black kit. Like, instant, definitely purchasing that. That's all I have to say. Excellent kit. Nice to see Nike do something that isn't a template kit. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of, the thing is, I kind of love the teal because it reminds me of like the vintage Black Caps kits and like vintage Air New Zealand.
Yeah, Air New Zealand.
I think
that's what it reminded me of instantly.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of camp. I like it. I don't know why. I like that it reminds me of like the Black Caps and Air New Zealand. Like, that's so Kiwi. And no one else is going to know that. Like, you think the US women's national team is going to care about that? No, and I kind of like that.
Well, so is it teal right across the back or just the side strips?
It's the side panels only, I think.
Right.
Yeah, panels and like the cuffs and the shorts as well, and the socks have
that like fern spray painting on that and on the band on the socks, which is quite a nice little detail, I think.
Oh, so the teal parts do have the. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you just have to really look at it. And then the other thing that I noticed is in the photo of the shorts that New Zealand football posted to like tease the kit drop. The New Zealand, like the fern, has got like rainbow flecks on it. Oh. I haven't seen anyone talk about that.
Seriously?
I like it.
Cool.
I missed that.
So
did I till I zoomed.
Maybe I like my nostalgia, but I know the reasons why they did it, but I'm a sucker for nostalgia, so I'm gonna miss the white kits. But I know why they did it, but
I never really liked the white kits, admission. Like, I just think it's a bit boring. I quite like having colour, but
I prefer the black being like our home or standard colour. And then sort of the white, I mean, obviously maybe different colour shorts. I preferred the white as the sort of away kit, but whether that's technically going to be a change now, I don't know.
They should have kept the white and just done the shorts for the reasons that they did the shorts. And yeah, but they're just me anyway.
I got to say that because I just watched the little clip on Instagram, so it's on the Football Ferns page. The socks that go with the white kit have got you're right, they've got like a power or a speckled kind of band around the top of the sock, which is definitively New Zealand, which looks very, very cool. So big fan of the socks.
I just think that also comparatively, when you look at the other kits in this drop, we got off pretty lightly. Like Canada's home or Canada's red strip with the maple leaf motif, that's nice. Portugal has a great away kit. That's pretty much it. The rest of them are like extremely boring. Like France's kit, but this is from 2016. Tell me it's really materially different. It's like it is a less accurate blue because France famously had a referendum to change the blue on its flag, and Nike seemed to have missed that and have the wrong blue. So I just think that considering it's quite a low effort kit drop, we got off lightly.
I feel like the away kits is usually where they have a little bit of room to play with colours, play with designs, but Nike is often sort of criticised for having a very templatey, like the England kit looks boring as hell. And the white Canada kit also looks boring as hell. Whereas all of those away kits that have been leaked or posted by Adidas are amazing.
Yeah, Adidas went off. Even just the imagery of the kit drop, like I don't like the imagery that accompanied like the collateral that accompanied the Nike kit drop. Like I think it's a bit weird and awkward. Whereas Adidas, like literally with the water and the imagery was incredible. And I like that because it's like, yeah, it's a World Cup here. It's huge drama. Whereas like the Nike kit drop, I was like, okay, well these kits all look essentially the same as they have done all World Cup cycle. Especially who I'm really feeling for is Australia.
The home kit, I like the pattern on the home kit, but the away kit is hideous.
The away kit is horrific. Like it's like if I had that as a training kit, I would be extremely irritated.
Like the deeper teal was okay, but that really light teal, yeah, I'm not a fan, and I my sense on the soccer Twitter is that other people aren't that keen on it. So we'll see how that pans out. But
I've seen a lot of Australians trying to like it. You know, you can always tell when someone's trying to convince themselves that things are bad. And I've seen a lot of that. Same with the US women's national team and their like paint spot kit.
Yeah, not too
Allegedly,
sure.
every kit is unique, but I don't believe that. So
with the kit, when the Ferns were playing the USA at Eden Park, they had a caravan selling the football Ferns kit, and this lady next to me was like, "Oh, look at those tops," and I was like, "Just wait a couple of months, new ones will drop for the World Cup. Save your $120 or whatever it was, get the new ones. Like, don't be in a rush." And yeah.
I hope they do them with personalization. I really hope that they do that. I think that would be really, really nice. Even if it was just like player only personalization, I think that would be neat.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to get a specific player's name. Like that's something you can't normally do in New Zealand. So
I mean, to be honest, New Zealand football need to step up their game merch-wise massively. Like the Ferns game I went to in Wellington, they actually had a pretty good range of merch there, but there's just like nothing on the New Zealand football website, or it sells out and it's all gone. So it's just, yeah, they really could be making a shit ton of money, surely, at least with the World Cup cycle.
Mind you, maybe they're just one of those teams that just like to push their merch at games.
But why? Like, who cares? People are going to buy it. They're going to buy it.
It's a World Cup year. I kind of want to see everything go full noise, to be honest, which is why I think our kits are nice, and I like that there's a really distinctive identity to our kit, but I just feel like for a World Cup year, a lot of the kits just didn't communicate the kind of buzz that you want to start to see build now. Like we're only a few months from kickoff, and I still am not feeling what I kind of hoped I would be feeling, which I'm not saying is like doom and gloom, because the Rugby World Cup, we know how fast that ramped up with the Black Ferns. But, I just think that the kit suppliers, the teams themselves, like everyone's kind of got to get on the train now.
So it was really weird that the launch that they had in Australia actually had like Ferns that aren't in the current squad. Like I'm guessing that they weren't available to be because they'd all gone into camp. But they had like Mona Walker and Hannah Blake like repping these kits, and I'm like, they are good. And Mona Walker is like apparently extremely fashionable, but that was just kind of like weird and incongruous.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is a little bit like, dropping kits in a window at one level, I get it because you're going to get to see it instantly, but it does make it hard for the federations to fit in around their preparation, especially a team like New Zealand where you're drawing players in from across the globe. Like it's people arrive at different times in Ferns camps, like massively different times. Like people arrive across a week. So I just think the whole thing is a little bit like, I think it's more complicated than it would be for a men's World Cup, is how I would put it.
So speaking of the Ferns coming together, they're currently in Turkey. The team manager put up a little 10-second snippet of where they're at, and oh my god, Turkey looks amazing. It was like palm trees, and there's like the swimming pool, and it's sunny. It's like, who wouldn't want to go and play football in Turkey?
But this is one of the questions that I actually had. Why are we playing this series in Turkey? Like we're not playing Turkey,
especially post the earthquakes.
Earthquakes. There's terrorism. There's it's weird. It's a weird choice. Why would you, it's not hard to find, like, when they're not putting on enormous events. These are
Well,
not going to be packed out stadiums. I just don't get it.
well, they couldn't do Iceland because I believe one of them is Iceland or Finland that was playing, and they couldn't Iceland. Okay, and they couldn't do the Iceland because of the other war that's going on. I think that has something to do with it, and I can't remember the other reason for the other team, but there were valid reasons.
I mean, it does. I literally just right now at my monitor Googled, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Antalya.
Antalya.
Yeah, it looks amazing. And like they can go see Hadrian's Gate, which personally I'm sold. So I hope that they have a really nice time. But more importantly, I hope that they win these games.
Please. At least score some goals.
That's me. This is so mission critical for the Ferns. Like, I feel like the Black Ferns have given the football Ferns a bit of a safety net, right? Because the Black Ferns had this narrative where they massively underperformed for a year coming up to the World Cup. All the expectations dropped away. They somehow became underdogs when really what had actually happened was the team had kind of fallen apart a little bit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think to an extent, people are like, well, it's okay. Like, if they perform terribly, like, they'll just be underdogs. I'm not sold on that. Like, I think if we want this tournament to capitalize on the opportunity it provides us, the Ferns need to at least score a handful in Turkey. At least.
But they've not changed their squad. So that's to move on to another talking point is really they've added Millie Clegg, and I don't think that they've made any really other change, and that's despite the fact that we've still struggled for many windows now.
I'm excited about Clegg, but I agree. It is. I mean, Mickey Robertson's received like an official call up initially for the first time as well, but she was functionally there the entire time last time, so it is very much a similar squad.
Yeah, a couple of additions though with CJ Bott and Jackie Hand coming back, so hopefully they'll help make a difference.
Yeah, Jackie Hand's not gonna. I mean, I hope she proves me wrong and scores a hat trick, but she's not really going to be the person that you're looking for to bag your goal. She's just going to be a good creative force. I'd like to see India Page Riley. I know she's had some injury niggles for pretty much the entire time that she's been in the Ferns setup, but I want to see her kind of put the hammer down now because she is a goal scorer, and you just have to do that on the world stage. Grace Jale, I think she gets in her own head too much, but she also can be a goal scorer. There are people in this team that can do it. And my next question is yes, it's not a very different squad, but I'm not entirely sure who else you bring in. Like maybe Katie Rood, but like
right. I mean, you would say it's the same old squad, but at this point, the only person we'd been repeatedly calling for and hadn't come through yet was Millie. The other people that sort of Knicks fans were like, you need to pick Foster, like that started to happen. But
I mean, there's Mickey Robertson who like went to Olympics with the Ferns and doesn't let her size affect her negatively at all in the A-League. But there are questions about like her size will. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm not doubting her ability, but her size will be more of a factor against a world-class backline like say the US Women's National Team or who's in our pool like Norway. So that she's not a no-brainer either. I just don't think that. I think this is such an unfortunate piece of timing, this World Cup, because honestly, it's like, yes, we have no goal scorers, but I don't know. It's not like we're leaving anyone at home, really. I mean, it would just be like Hannah Wilkinson. It's like they just need to start showing some leadership, to be honest, because actually, I do think there are goals in this team.
Yeah.
It's unclear why they're not getting scored.
I always go back to my same point. I truly think I have that theory that I have about needing that poster people is for FIFA is correct. I think that I keep saying that the only reason why the old here keep getting picked because they're like our poster people for football here. And I think
that, and even deeper than that, who else? Again,
I truly think, and I've said this to many people, and I've said this to Holly and Jonathan a bunch of times. I just think that they are kept in because people like their players with staff help for their ad campaigns.
Yeah, the same conversation's being had about the Matildas at the moment, though. Like, yeah, there are some quality players coming out of the A-League, like Michelle Heyman, who can't get picked for the Matildas squad. So it's kind of
embarrassing.
The Matildas have goal scorers, and we kind of have goal scorers, but they just haven't scored in a while. So
I think like the Matildas have the opposite problem of us. They have like an embarrassment of riches. Not all the way across the park. I have to say not all the way, but in large parts and including up front. And so you're leaving home someone like, potentially Michelle Heyman, who almost won the Golden Boot for the A-League this season. So, but for us, it's like, well, okay, we can criticize this player, but do we have anybody better?
yeah.
I think the Matildas are, to be honest, are a really nice comparison point in a number of ways. But if we look at their front line, I think that tells you a lot about what the issues are for the Ferns. Because, for example, you take someone who is probably, doesn't have that many caps yet, plays in Australia, Courtney Vine. Her calling card is that she's really quick, right? So that instantly puts her in a comparable position with a Paige Satchel, with an Ava Collins, with that kind of player. The difference being that Courtney Vine gets 3 touches in behind you and slots.
Yeah.
Like, she's just clinical. She takes the chances, and that's why she hurts teams. And that's what we don't have. Like, we have component parts of a Courtney Vine, but we just don't have a player that will consistently be clinical and finish. I think Millie Clegg is the closest. Like, Millie Clegg 8 times out of 10 is either putting a shot on frame in a way that's forcing the keeper to save it, she's getting it on the gloves, or she's scoring. And that is good. That's a good sign. But like Paige Satchel, the end product still isn't there. I haven't really seen it from India Paige Riley despite her club form. Hannah Wilkinson, from my perspective, just has not been finishing at anywhere near an international standard for the last several years. So
Yeah.
The magic, the Hannah Wilkinson whisperer is Holly McNamara. So maybe if we can convince Holly McNamara to join the Ferns.
Surely she's got a grandparent or something somewhere.
Oh God, wouldn't it? Yeah, no, it's all that same problem. But the thing is, if Courtney Vine disappeared off the face of the earth tomorrow, there's someone else to step in for the Matildas. There's always somebody else to step in.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? The Matildas can drop people when they're not scoring. Like Hayley Razzo got dropped when she wasn't scoring, for example. Like, there is that wolf at the door. I'm not saying that they always drop people when they need to be dropped, or that they've never had a selection drama, but they have that ability. We honestly don't. Like, I see people saying Klinkova should be more ruthless. She should drop the old guard. She should have cleaned house. But what would come after that? Because when she was forced to clean house by playing a game outside of a window and selected National League players, she got slated for that. So I think, at some level it's like, well, I feel for her, because I think she admitted it in press today. This is just the World Cup. It's got really unfortunate timing in terms of where we are developing players.
Yeah, because there's kind of there's the under 20 squad who played last year, and there's the under 17s who are doing really well, and then there's like this gap, and then there's like everyone who's kind of 26 plus, but there's this window of about 5 or 6 years of players, and there's just going back to the Wilkinson thing, I think one difference between the Ferns who got together to play the US and the Ferns who have gotten together now is a number of the Kiwi players who are coming out of those A-League teams have improved their form quite a bit from when we played USA. And one person in particular is Claudia Bunge. Yeah, so Melbourne were pretty average before Christmas. They've come right, and Claudia had an amazing game on the weekend. So she's starting to peak. Wilco's starting to peak. Like, there's some of these players are starting to find that form later in the A-League season. Fingers crossed that transfers across to the Ferns.
What do you think happens with this gap? Because the A-League women has finished for almost all of the teams apart from the top 4, And so all of these players, I mean, I know I spoke to some of the next players and they said that they were going to look at playing NPL women's, either New South Wales or Victoria. But like, how do you manage this really long gap that we have now with the A-League players?
So NZ football is alive to this, and there's a centralised training camp being organised, which, like, I feel it was the Canberra game, and Riley Dobson or whatever was commentating and was quite disparaging at the training camp because she was like, well, what's that going to achieve? You're not playing games. But I believe that it's going to be modelled off the FFDP, so like games against boys, which I think that's probably as good a solution as exists. Is the reality. Like, otherwise, what are you going to do? Like, for some players, maybe NPL is the option. I don't think that's foolproof. Other players would just go back to like the W League in Wellington, or they would play NRFL here, which, like, to be honest, those leagues aren't that good anymore. They're full of young players. I don't think that's the solution either. So, I mean, again, it's just awkward.
Yeah. For me, I would like and sorry to drop in another sport here, but I would like to see the Women's National League take sort of a page out of the New Zealand Basketball League book, and try and get some imports or Australian signings over. So maybe like I don't know, just throwing ridiculous names out there. Maybe a Courtney Vine, or maybe just bring some more star power to the league, to the National League, similar to what they do with the basketball, because they both happen around the same time.
You're right. I mean, the NPL in like Victoria, for example, like Hannah Keane was just playing in the NPL Victoria. Like, they do what you're talking about, like they attract real talent to play in their winter leagues. But I mean, firstly, I played in the NRFL, which instantly tells you what the quality of that league is. And secondly,
got a hat trick on the weekend.
But yes, I did score a hat trick on the weekend. But it's different now, even from when I was there, because my age group all got cleaned out. So it's players who are between 15 and 18. That league is just not going to develop international quality players. This is probably going to be cancelled on like NZ Soccer Twitter, but it's just not. So unless we want to somehow attract players like the NPL Victoria or New South Wales does, which we're not going to be able to do because clubs don't use resources for women.
It's more than a resource, like, it's because those are all amateur leagues. The NPL system in Australia, they're paid, they're semi-pro. They do actually, the top teams get paid.
Yeah.
And so it's not fantastic money, but there's an attraction to stay in Australia, play for a good NPL team, get paid sort of a roughly part-time wage, work a normal job otherwise, and just sustain yourself that way through the winter. And it's why so many, like, even we talked about Courtney Vine and how good she was. She played for Sydney Olympic last winter. She didn't even leave, although sometimes there's personal reasons for that. But, the standard is so good. Like, you see Matildas sticking around and playing NPL in New South Wales. So that's part of it, is possibly financial. There's actual financial reward.
I can see your point, but I think that if they tried hard enough, they could do something similar here.
Well, the men's leagues do that. Like, that's the first thing I would say, is that the NRFL in Auckland, at least, in all the men's first teams, some of them are paid even though they're not supposed to be, and there's all sorts of fancy little ways that they label the payments so that they can do it without getting done over for it being an amateur league, et cetera, et cetera. Like, that money is floating around, and I just think it's a solution that actually just, we're so quick in New Zealand to be like, there's no money, there's no resources, can't do it. But we don't even think about how it can be done or what money there is floating around. Like, everyone knows it's the most open secret in the NRFL that clubs circumvent the amateur rule to pay men's players. Everybody knows that, and yet we just act like that money's not there. I just think it's a solution that, we're being like, what are we going to do with these players? What are we going to do with these players? Because we never think about these things. Like, we just assume, well, we'll just ship them off somewhere else to develop them,
So the Knicks played their last game on Saturday. On Sunday, the Ferns got on a plane and went to Turkey. on Monday, I think there was probably about 3 or 4, maybe even more, who jumped on a plane and went straight to Aussie in search of more football in the NPL, because you're right, there's remuneration. They can make a bit of a living out of it, but they're also getting that higher quality of football, which New Zealand is unable to offer at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that those players get good options over there, to be honest. Like, everything being as it is right now.
The fact that we are co-hosting a World Cup with Australia and we can't provide the same sort of program is terrible, and they're putting it lightly.
Yeah, I mean, like, in some ways it is a feature, it's economies of scale, right? Like, it's very easy to forget that Australia is literally huge. Like, a massive country. Like, we compare ourselves to Australia all the time because we're so close to them, but it's not comparable at all. Which I think is kind of a little bit, this whole like as one campaign, a little bit is really hard for NZ football to navigate, because of course Australia's got a lot more money, time, people to work with.
There's a strong footballing culture in Australia, and it's very fraught because it's not the Anglo-Australian culture so much. It's this post-World War II immigrants from Greece, from the Balkans, from Portugal, from all of these different places where football is it. It's all about football. So there are a lot of the clubs that even that you wouldn't know unless you knew the history. They're actually like ethnic, quote unquote, ethnic clubs. Like Bree Edwards, I'm in Siobhan Edwards, Bankstown City. I'm assuming Bree will re-sign for Bankstown City. That's a Macedonian club. Like, it's all sort of the ethnicity has been filtered out of it, and it's a whole nother topic that we won't go into. But there's these roots for Australian soccer that are really, really, really strong amongst certain sections of the population, and I think that helps.
I would say not to get on my Croatian soapbox, but we actually have that too. Central United, Croatian ethnic club, Wellington Olympic, Greek.
Okay.
Croatian, Italian. So we have that. It's a similar mechanism, but I guess it just hasn't. You know, when I've played football in Australia, I've seen what you're talking about, that those communities are alive and that love of football has kind of continued. We seem to have not been able to really harness that. Like, I wrote a history scholarship on it a couple of summers ago, so this is my mastermind topic, but we've really not been able to harness that. We can't really seem to inculcate it post 2010 when we got that boom, and that momentum has since dropped off, and it certainly hasn't filtered through to the women's game. You know, and there's no club loyalty in the women's game, I'll tell you that much for free.
So part of the equation as well is that success breeds success. So Matilda's put funding in year on. They're able to grow players. They go to the World Cup. If you do well at the World Cup, you get income, you get funding. So that's partly when the New Zealand football has fallen out, is because we haven't achieved those results. We haven't been earning that income, which has been able to be invested back into the game. Hopefully, now that FIFA are increasing the prize pool and the money coming back, we may see some increased development in the game, which could potentially lead to semi-pro, around domestic league. Who knows? But we kind of almost need to get some success and be able to tap into that money pool for further success to come.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the problem, isn't it?
Sorry. So circling back to the series itself, what do we know about this these sides that we are facing?
Very interesting combination of friendlies is what I would say, and I like it as a combination. So the Scandinavian style of play is very different to the Europeans, like the lower continent European style, and it's different to a South American than Argentina. So it is completely different to what we've played so far, and it is similar to Norway. So I like that as a preparation style. So they are going to try to play through the press. They're going to try to find their 10 a lot. They're really going to put our back line, especially if we choose to play with a back three, that's really going to be a fire test for them. So I like that as a preparation game. And then Nigeria, I love the way they play. I love the technical flair, the creativity on the ball, the mercurial pace, the clinical finishing. I just think that they're so fun to watch. And that, again, is super different. Kind of like what I think the Philippines are going to try to do. Like probably sit a bit deep in the defensive block and then hit you really fast on the counter. So I think from Klinkova's perspective, like these are excellently selected opposition. I think it's going to be hard to get results that we so desperately need.
So do you think whatever formation she and either of you can answer this, do you think whatever formation she plays in this series will be her World Cup formation? Obviously.
I would be shocked if they only have one formation going into the World Cup. I would expect the Ferns to be constantly switching at the tournament between a back three and a back four, because the makeup of the pool that we're in, that just the teams that are in it are going to demand different approaches. So I would hope to see them switching, because I think that any team with their soul should be able to change formation mid-game, is my humble opinion.
For the logistics, obviously you don't get a lot of time when there's a short series in a window, but how long will the team get together before the first match kicks off for the World Cup?
When's game one? The 7th? Yeah, so Friday is the first game. So they would have had a week.
Oh, so for the World Cup?
Oh,
I was just wondering, because we know it's a very short period of time for like the FIFA window where you get to have a couple of games, but for the World Cup itself, do we have any idea whether they get 1 week or 2 weeks together before it actually kicks off?
No, they get almost a month.
More? Good.
Yeah.
They'll be camped for like 4 weeks.
4 weeks, great.
Maybe even slightly longer than that, like it's kind of, at least 4, maybe even out to 5 or 6 weeks. They get a really decent period of time together.
I'm really glad, because one of the things that we've talked about and the media have talked about is just the lack of time that they get to spend together. So amazing. I'm excited for them that they get that, a really long period of time.
And at home, like I do think that's when the home advantage is actually really going to start to bed in, because on your days off, you can see family and friends. You can actually get off the football pitch. Like the Ferns are always away from home, so their days off are kind of like doing touristy stuff or sightseeing, and that actually, it's cool, but it's not super replenishing. It's not super grounding. I don't think it's the best thing for what it is that the Ferns need to do, which is actually backs against the wall, get it together, find something that they haven't been able to find for 3 years, 4 years. So I think that being able to go home and see their family and see the fields that they grew up playing on, or whatever other like Ted Lasso script writing you want to work in, is going to be massive for them. But I just want to win a game.
So looking at the squad, there are a couple of, Stotty's back. Rebecca Stott, she wasn't in the squad for the US version, US games. What's she going to bring?
I love Rebecca Stott. Like I grew up idolizing her. She used to coach at my school growing up, and so you'd see her riding her bike across campus with like a massive bag of footballs on her back, and I just think that she's an icon. But also she brings such calmness, such class, such game intelligence on the field. Like truly a cut above anyone else other than possibly Rhea Percival that we have right now. Like she just is such a student of the game, such a good technician. She sets tempo, she can control tempo, and that's going to be massive, especially against Nigeria. I would think that the Ferns are going to have more possession than they used to, not because Nigeria is not a good team, just because of the way that they choose to play. And so having someone that can actually be productive with that possession, like Rebecca Stott, is a good get.
And against USA, Ali Riley was playing centre-back, which is not her preferred position. Where does she play in this series? What do we do? What does Ali do?
Just go back to her normal position, which is left back, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you can't, like, I'm a firm believer that a centre backs are born, not made. So
The way that she played in the US, or a series, and even the other, you know, and the a playoff tournament series, I reckon she'd make a good midfield player, like coming in a bit more, you know, like a defensive mid or something.
yeah, I tend to think of Ellie Wright. I think she's a great player in terms of straight line speed, and she's good as a fullback who can get forward. But I don't really rate her as an all-sided metronomic turning player. I think it's good for her to have the sideline. But I'd like to see her in a more attacking fullback role, like so she can get, like you say, like get involved a bit more, because she's definitely not like a classic fullback.
Because the left back thing or the right back, however, whatever side you want to choose, it had been known to work in the midfield because the Phoenix tried it with Kate Taylor this season, and I quite liked it. So I want to see. I think Ellie Riley would be perfect for that same sort of role, coming into that midfield area. I don't know.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree with you, Blake. But then you've got someone like Michaela Moore playing in front of her. I don't know, that just the quality of the midfield for the Ferns is kind of that little better.
Not for every.
You know, Michaela, Steinmetz had a fantastic. She's did really well for Wanderers, so she's going to be there owning that, you know, through that defensive midfield. So I agree with you, but I'm just not sure that Ellie's got quite enough to get ahead of some of these other players in the squad.
Even if you tried it for one game or off the bench or something. Yeah, I don't know.
I do think the transition from centre back, like Kate Taylor plays, to centre defensive midfielder, like as players where you consider those basically the same position, roles quite similar. But fullback is hugely specialised. So I don't know. I think Ellie Riley, if she can stay fit, then she's a decent shout for starting fullback. Which the fact that I'm putting it that low is almost heretical in New Zealand football. But she has been kind of plagued by injuries. Her ability to back up in a tournament setting concerns me somewhat, but then fullback doesn't really concern me anymore because I think Michaela Foster just slotted right in. She was totally at the level. Grace Neville impresses me. Michaela Moore is a very usable fullback, so I think that fullback's fine. I think that Malia has earned a starting spot in midfield. Malia is the best player I've ever played with. Like, when she is on, she has preternatural ability to be where she needs to be, and you just can't teach that. But then you're going to have maybe Rhea come back. I don't know how she's tracking with the ACL, which is obviously how long's a piece of string. Like, those recoveries can take 15 months. And no tournament is worth risking serious injury for, in my opinion. So
I saw like photos or a video of her starting to train, like put her boots on and run around the field. So that's something, but it's still a long way to go from that point.
Yeah, if she's back, it's going to be tight, you know. And the thing is, like, this 9-month, 10-month time frame that people talk about, that's a men's recovery. Some players do it. I don't know many surgeons that would consider it best practice. I know Ellie Carpenter for the Matildas, 8.5 months or something. That freaks me out. I hope that everything goes well with that. But really,
she's a machine, though. She's something else.
She's a machine. But really, for women, they're looking at 12 months as the standard case, you know. So it's going to be tight. It's going to be tight for Flea. So players like Malia have a chance to step up, basically, you know, own that midfield spot. And that doesn't worry me. I think Malia can do it.
So one player or a couple of players who I think have gone a very long way to be a part of the squad but may not actually get any time are Millie Clegg and Kate Taylor. And that's nothing against them, not saying that they're not good, they can't do it. But Kate has not been on top form this season for the Knicks. She's been good, but I don't know that she's quite Ferns back four yet. And Millie's a little bit on the young side. She may get some minutes as a sub, which would be fantastic. But they may have, I don't know, maybe I don't want to be pessimistic. I'm trying to be a bit realistic, but I think they've gone, they've travelled a long way to go to be a part of a squad, but not necessarily get their minutes. What do you all think?
I think Millie is your 80-minute sub to mix stuff up. You know, I think that's where she probably would sit unless she was amazing in those 10 minutes, and then you decided you wanted to start her probably a bit much. But I'd love to see her come on in the, like 75th, 80th minute and just tear it all up. I think Kate has been on and off for the Knicks this season. She copped an injury and was out for a while. She conceded a couple of own goals. She would look quite shaky, and then she'd turn around and have, like, the last couple of games were quite good. But I think the last Ferns performance wasn't helped by the fact that it was 3 at the back. And because it was 3 at the back, you had, less support. Like, she doesn't have as many other defenders around her. And that's always a massive struggle when you change a formation, especially at the back, where suddenly it's like, oh, no one else can cover that. It has to be me. I don't know.
I mean, this might be wild, but no, sorry, let you go.
You go first. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, this might be a kind of bold take, but if really literally anyone else, she'd be too young, she wouldn't be in this camp. So they're already rolling the dice. I would be surprised if we see maybe a 75-minute sub. Like, I think, like, if she cuts it in the first week of camp and she's training well, if I nick her, I'm being like, all right, got nothing to lose, no one's scoring, let's see what you can do. And I do think that Yekaklinkova is quite ruthless, and I do think that that's why she's brought Millie in. Like, if provided she's not a fish out of water in the training environment, I think she could get some minutes and should get some minutes, because, like, what else is going on? Like, who else is scoring? Like, yeah, she's 17, but Rosie White made her Ferns debut at like 14.99 years. Like, it's not best practice, but it's not worst practice either. She's got a good head on her shoulders. Like, give it a go.
Sorry, Blake, you were gonna.
I'm in your camp, Helena, because I think, like, they're obviously high on her, and to bring her in, I would start her. I would. Yes, that's bold, but if they're that high on her to bring her in, obviously they've got planned to start her, because obviously they see her as the next big thing in New Zealand football. So why wouldn't you start her and show her to the world? If she's going to be your next big superstar, I would just take the ball and run with it, really.
My word question with Millie Clegg, though, is, and I've been saying this to people all week, like, A-League aside, she's clearly A-League level. That's beyond debate. But the jump that I think people underestimate is 20s to Ferns. That's the jump that absolutely murders New Zealand football, because it's huge. It's just huge. People can be world class on the 20s stage and just thoroughly ordinary at senior level. So I don't want to heap too much expectation on Millie. For me, like, she is a Hail Mary. Like, you shouldn't be reliant on some 17-year-old wunderkind to score some goals when you're hosting a World Cup. You just shouldn't be. But if we have to be, then we have to be, So I don't know. I wouldn't start her game one, but I would like to see her get 20 minutes game one. And if she sets the world on fire, I'm not opposed to Yeka saying, all right, have the first half game too. I think that whatever needs to happen needs to happen.
But this is where the question comes of, like, being a fish out of water at camp. Like, well, why wasn't she in the last camp, for example, or earlier? Why are you bringing her into camp at such a late period of time? Is it too late, in a way, to really get the most out of her? Is it too late, or unhelpful to leave it so late?
Because I don't think she was ready that last camp. I think the fact that she played better playing so well for the Phoenix in that last quarter of the season, maybe half, is what got her. She improved so much. She was one of the, and we can say this now because the season's over, she was one of our best players in the second half of the season for me.
I tend to agree. Like, I do think that it's easy to be a bit revisionist with Millie Clegg because she didn't like set the Knicks on fire straight away. She did have an adjustment period there. So I do understand why the thinking, and I'm sure that this was a two-sided conversation with the Knicks as well. Like, player development is a multi-sided thing. Like, I do see a very strong case for like, no, it's just too early. And like, we do need to play the long game because we have burnt a lot of really good players out. Like, a lot of players my generation do not play football anymore because they hated being in that national level setup, and that's just the reality. And so like I understand the caution. I just think again it's this timing where yes it's probably a bit too late because she is going to have a learning curve in camp. She's going to have the social side to navigate, like breaking into a very consolidated, for better or worse, unit of a team. There is going to be a lot for her to deal with, but equally by all accounts it sounds like she's a super level-headed kid. So if anyone can do it, sounds like it's her.
So there is, sorry, Blake, but there is one player who's not in the squad who's had just the absolute worst season whatsoever, and that was Alyssa Wynnum. And this time last year, Alyssa, she went to the States with the Ferns, she went to Japan with the Ferns, and this is to err on the side of caution, but when she came back from all of that, she was physically and mentally drained. Like, you're absolutely right, Helena, making that step up to a senior squad at that top level where that squad already has, like, they're pretty tight, and you're like the new kid on the block, the new thing, and you're coming in trying to figure out where do you fit in that can be pretty hard. So I really hope that the Ferns do a good job of just getting around Millie and just helping her to, and obviously, you've got Kate Taylor, Mackenzie Barry, Mickey Foster's there, so there are a few Knicks players that she knows, so she won't be completely alone or isolated, but I really hope that they do somewhat look after her to help her through that journey, because I mean, she could have 15 years of football, or even 17 years playing at that very top level, so we just kind of, who knows?
Keeping her for the next World Cup cycle, that's mission critical, right? Because if you build a squad around Alyssa Wynnum and Millie Clegg and Kate Taylor, Marisa Vandermeer, like, that's starting to look like a pretty good squad. So I guess it's this home World Cup. Like, it's so easy to be like, well, this is what it's all about. It's all about 2023. But for us, we know that 2023 is the start of a legacy. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But again, like, God, I want them to win a game. So I would like them to win some of these friendlies. And if that requires Millie Clegg, then it requires Millie Clegg. And it just might, it just might.
So in 4 years' time, Millie Clegg will be 21. Like,
that's ridiculous, right?
It's like, whoa!
I feel that
15 still.
I feel the same with the not being ready. I felt the same with Michaela Foster too. I think it's again same sort of formula. I reckon the second half of the season at the Phoenix is what got her that around the Ferns. Yeah.
The slight difference there, though, Blake, is that Mickey Foster, I think she's 23, so she's got 6 or 7 years maturity on Millie. Millie's basically still a high school student, so Mickey Foster's kind of got that little bit of age. So I absolutely agree. It was the second half of the next season that got her into the Ferns. Just one name that just came up, which Helena mentioned, who's not in the squad, who goodness knows when she will be, is Vandermeer. Because Marisa she is fantastic. She is a really good, solid player. She comes in, she backs up, she provides cover, she lets the fullbacks do their thing. So who knows? Hopefully, she may get the call up to the Ferns in maybe next year, or
she can score goals. She can score goals. We did not score a lot of goals in the Knicks, and she was someone who scored multiple goals. So
she'll be.
Yeah.
It's this timing thing, but she'll be in the Ferns in a year, because after this World Cup, half the squad's going to retire, and then it really will be the rebuilding phase that everyone's been asking for. So, like, kind of, I guess it sucks that she because of her age, she's not quite ready for 2023. But there's probably quite a lot of players in that boat. I mean, there's a lot of players like from that 17s cohort. When you really think about it, like Kelly Brown, I think she's playing in the NPL, so she's kind of dropped off the radar. Like Hannah Mackay-Wright, I know she's been down in Dunedin studying. Anika Middendorf, like that double World Cup year, like that was a real strain. I don't think she plays anymore. So that 17 squad that Marissa was in, like she's done well to still be playing from that group. Which I think we all just need to like pause and reflect on that.
What do we need to change to have people that age just burning out and dropping out?
I mean,
that's a huge question. Maybe you can't answer. I don't know.
Anyone who went through high performance football knows exactly why people get burnt out. Like we were training every day of the week, all the time. Like you were in a school team, you were in a club team, you might have been in 2 club teams, you were playing futsal, you were playing FGC, you were playing NTC. Like you were overloaded, so you got injured, you weren't eating enough. No one understood that female bodies need to be fueled differently. Like everything about it was perfectly designed to burn kids out. The same players getting selected for a 17s World Cup, 2 months later they're at the 20s World Cup. A 20s World Cup is a different beast. You look at the team sheets, it's like Glenfield Rovers, Western Springs, Waterside Karori, and then on the other side it's like PSG, Barcelona. Like that's what a 20s World Cup is. Like this again, mastermind subject, like because I've seen my friends go through this. Of course we burn these people out. I got burnt out. I stopped playing high level football. It's just what we do to people. So when everyone's heaping pressure on Millie Clegg, I guess that just, for me, like it's a lived experience thing. I'm like, whoa, there's a bigger picture here, which is the 17s group that won 3rd at the World Cup, the world is their oyster. 60% of them are gone. That's a bit depressing. Anyway, yay.
Is it getting better? Are the steps and the changes in personnel meaning that it is starting to change? And it's got to help that the Knicks are around, I would like to think.
That's huge, right? Like that you can stay in New Zealand to play professionally, that's huge. But the other thing is, like, I know from players, I'm obviously not going to name names, but I know from players that have been in camps like pre and post Klinkova, I know that environment is better. And I think that the Ferns aren't performing yet, but they aren't fearful on the pitch, which they have been. I don't know if there's enough grit yet, but there's not that kind of terror to make a mistake anymore, which I think is a positive reflection of the culture. And I think that the people who are involved in youth development are great at what they do. There's good sports side around them. There's good mental health support around them. The Phoenix have really been leading on that. Like players taking time out and saying it's mental health, this is why I'm doing it. That kind of stuff's huge. 5 years ago, if I told even just like an NRFL club that my mental space wasn't right and I wanted a weekend off, like in the NRFL, that would have been a huge deal. So yes, it's getting better. And like, I want the Ferns to be a model for it, but we just have to, we have to think bigger than 2023, I think. It's a strange thing for me to be saying. Like, I worked at NZF when we were starting to think about this pipe dream. I obviously care a lot about football in this country. 2023 is huge, but it's huge for the future. So there's no point kind of destroying that future in the pursuit of 2023,
And that's the thing we always try to be cognizant of as fans as well. And on the podcast is that, we do criticize players and as fans, there's room for us to criticize players appropriately, but we always do try to be mindful that we don't want to crush someone or we don't want to put too much strain on someone. It's really easy to do that as a fan. Because you don't know what's going on behind, and you don't know what their training environment and their support environment is like. And so I'd hate to think that as a fan or as a group of fans, you'd ever say something that would push towards somebody quitting or burning out and things like that. So I'm glad it's being talked about more, and I'm really glad that your feedback, Helena, is that it is improving. But that's
part of the legacy of 2023, right? That we want it to have. Like we want the Ferns. I guess I'm saying it every time, but I want them to win a game, but I want them to enjoy this tournament as well. This is a huge moment. It's a watershed moment. they're playing in front of their friends and family in a World Cup. Like, I do want there to be enjoyment. And so I guess, I mean, the kind of note that I kind of want to like finish this on is that we've talked about how it's kind of mission critical for the Ferns to win these games. I do think it's mission critical for the fans to work out a way, whatever happens, whatever the results are, we have to work out a way to keep being excited about 2023. For all the reasons we've talked about, the Ferns are in a rebuilding phase, awkward timing. It's about the future. It's about legacy. Like, we have to be aware of that, right? And we have to be like on the train with them. And we can't. I think the time is gone past now for us to be like, what is wrong with you? It's time for us to be like, well, okay, strap yourselves in. Because no one being a football fan was easy, you know.
Everybody who's been on the Wellington Phoenix train for the past 2 seasons, we know what it's like to lose. We know what it's like to be overjoyed by getting a win, and stoked when we score goals. So I think that I feel like everybody who's a dead keen Wellington Phoenix fan won't drop the ball on sticking with the Ferns. It's sort of the general public, the non-footballing public I worry about, and the media I worry about a bit. But
yeah,
spare a thought for those of us who have been supporting the Warriors since 1995. We know what losing is. We know what to get on the train.
This year is our year. Let's go on.
So the Ferns, we've got this. We've got all the love and respect for the Ferns. We're getting on that train. We're not getting off. We've been through worse.
So true. It's not easy being a Kiwi sports fan.
As we put a bow on this, is there anything else we want to touch on, whether it's a bit of free for all or going back to what we talked about earlier or anything?
Okay, so my question is to the group is, what are our predictions? New Zealand versus Iceland.
10-0 to us.
Nice. Get your stake in the ground early.
That's if you ask me what the prediction for the other match is, I'm going to say 10-0 to us.
Okay, so Holly got that.
Holly's both games 10-0, so we're going to get 20 goals in 180 minutes.
Score 19 of them.
Oh, that's a hard question. Only vote 2-1 Ferns like Iceland. 2-1
Iceland. Okay.
Yeah, and I do think Nigeria might beat us, but in the interest of optimism, I would say 2-0 to the Ferns. Yeah.
Yeah, just for the record, Nigeria did amazing, and I think it was the under-17s or under-20 World Cup.
Yeah, they're a powerhouse of women's football.
Yeah.
So the hill to climb is vertical.
I'm hopeful for a draw against Iceland and maybe a competitive loss against Nigeria. That's what I'd like.
Yeah, I'm similar. I think we might go. I'm going to go out on a wing here. I'm going to go 3-1 to the Ferns against Iceland and 2-1 to Nigeria.
Yeah.
See how wrong we were, how right we were. I could be right. Statistically, maybe I should go and put like money on those bets. The payout would be bloody nice.
I think you'd probably be able to buy a house with that kind of payout.
I would also be throwing my money away, to be honest. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll review. We'll do a review pod once the series is over. I don't know how much of it actually I'll be able to watch because it's not being broadcast here.
It's at 1 a.m. here.
Unless you turn on and watch. Like, I can't. It's not being broadcast here.
Yeah.
So and they never illegally stream women's football.
No
one. It's a men's football match. Easy. You just go on Joker Stream or VIP Box or any one of those many. But for women's football, it almost never gets streamed. So I don't actually know where I'll be able to watch it.
Well, so the few batters that get up at 1 a.m. I don't know if you're in that camp, but I hope you enjoy it and go well to the Ferns and to Millie Clear.
Yes. Take it easy.
All right. Did I wrap this up for us?
I think you did. Thanks.
Okay. So if you like this video, like and subscribe on YouTube. And if you want to listen to us on any of your favorite audio platforms. You can find us on all your favorite audio platforms. But until then, we will see you on the next one.